Okay, I think some folks might still be trickling in, but it looks like it's slowing down, so let's go ahead and jump on in. First, a quick tech announcement from Alex. Oh, Alex, you're on mute.
If you would like to have, hi everyone, thank you for coming. If you would like to have closed captioning turned on, here are some instructions on how to do that, and you can choose your the language that you wish to see in the closed captioning as well. So if you would prefer to follow along in a different language than we're going to be speaking English today on the call, please follow along with these instructions. Um, and um, and yeah, it's pretty simple to follow through there. But yeah, it should be able to be let everybody in and make this as inclusive as possible. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Alex. And a quick content warning before we get started today. We are going to be talking a bit about intimate partner violence and its intergenerational nature today, but we will not be doing any specific descriptions or images or stories about instances of violence. But please do feel free to take care of yourself in whatever way feels best to you, including leaving this webinar if that's what feels right to you. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Michelle.
Thank you so much. Just making sure I'm off mute. Okay. It's wonderful to see everyone gathered here today, all of us interested in learning more about how to break generational cycles of poverty. I'm Michelle Roan Collins, the CEO of Lyft, and our mission is to break that cycle by investing in parents. We build families' well-being, financial strength, and social connections to lift generations, two generations at once. Or as we put it, it is an investment of hope, money, and love that we all need to get by and thrive in our lives. And we do this by providing direct one-on-one financial, employment, and educational coaching to nearly 1,000 families nationwide, putting parents in the driver's seat along the way to set their own goals. However, we also recognize that coaching can put the onus on families to make changes within systems that ultimately do not work to support their success. As such, in addition to a model that changes lives, we see a path forward to changing systems at scale through technical assistance that infuses holistic economic coaching rooted in dignity and respect into places where parents already show up, like pediatric healthcare visits or Head Start centers. We also know that from decades of research on the social determinants of health, that poverty has long-term physical health and well-being consequences, especially when financial hardship is experienced during early childhood. But while the impacts of adverse childhood experiences can be long-lasting, they don't have to be. We have the tools to change the circumstances so that families and their children can move from surviving and reviving to striving and thriving. To that end, we commissioned about an evaluation of Lyft's model to see how our work might serve as an upstream intervention to intimate partner violence. Today, we're excited to share with you the results of that evaluation and a little bit more about Lyft's work. And our hope is that through this conversation today, that we can use what we learn to expand our collective toolboxes with strategies that increase families' well-being, decrease household stressors, and prevent partner violence by integrating interventions that address both economic stability and mobility. Now, we wouldn't be here if it was not for the investment, support, and true partnership with the Blue Shield of California Foundation. With that said, I'll hand it off to Lucia Corral Pena to share a bit more about why they invest in this work. Lucia is the Chief Program Officer for the Blue Shield of California Foundation, leading their work to break the cycle of domestic and family violence. Thank you so much for your leadership in this space, Lucia. Take it away. Is Lucia? available?
I don't think Lucia was able to log in. She was on earlier, but I think she's having some technical difficulties
Okay.
on her side.
Okay. So maybe we can leave some space for her at the end of the call.
I think
And
so. I think that'd be great.
yeah, and then with that, we'll hand it over to the panel.
Thank you so much. So I am Dina Fulton. My pronouns are she, her, and I have been working with Ray Dooley, they, them, who is also here. If you want to, I'll say a quick hello, Ray. Nice way. Thank you. So Ray and I worked together to carry out this evaluation that Michelle described, and we are going to present today some of the most important findings. We will also be sending you the report after this, so you can dig into the details if you want to learn more. So we started this evaluation with a foundation knowing that LIFT was really already connected to intimate partner violence work based on our experience working in intimate partner violence prevention. Some of the things we knew to be important going in were that low income and economic stress are associated with higher risk for intimate partner violence. That is well documented in the literature. It has been well known for a long time. There's also a cycle of violence for survivors, wherein the kinds of influences that make people more at risk for experiencing intimate partner violence sometimes are also the effects of experiencing intimate partner violence. So the experience of surviving this violence makes survivors more at risk for future violence. There's also a cycle of violence for children, where witnessing intimate partner violence against a parent or caregiver can increase the risk for experiencing intimate partner violence later in life. We'll get into that in a little more detail in just a moment here, but this was the starting point. So with that, we did 3 components to this evaluation. The first was a literature review. We were looking for evidence, sort of theoretical, about how LIFT is connected to intimate partner violence prevention. We were also looking at what interventions already exist out there, what has already been evaluated that's sort of similar, to see really the best ways to make the connections between LIFT's model and intimate partner violence prevention. We did quantitative analysis of the quarterly LIFT member survey. So this survey has already existed for a long time. There was a data set existing and it focused on LIFT's priority outcomes that we ended up figuring out were quite aligned with intimate partner violence prevention. We also reviewed some existing case studies done with survivors who were also members of LIFT. We're not going to get into depth about that analysis during today's presentation because it's mostly about program recommendations for LIFT. But again, if you want to learn more, that is in the report that you will see afterwards. So some of the key findings from the literature review were, first, as we knew, there's a strong consensus that economic stress and low income are important predictors of intimate partner violence risk. What we learned also is that is true across racial and ethnic identities, and even when controlling for a variety of other factors. So economic stress and low income are really critical and key for many, many people, if not everyone, in terms of intimate partner violence risk. We also learned that social isolation and social connection are key themes among a lot of the risk and protective factors or influences that determine risk level for intimate partner violence. And we found that several dimensions of well-being that LIFT already prioritizes in their programming are also protective factors for IPV. So this was good news to begin with. We were able to suss out this intergenerational cycle for intimate partner violence between parents and children. So what that looks like is being exposed to intimate partner violence against a parent or caregiver can directly lead to increased risk for children for future intimate partner violence. It can also set off what's called in the literature an adverse developmental pathway, where as a child is growing and developing, this sort of the violence, the experience of witnessing violence, and the risk factors in their life can just set off sort of a domino effect of adverse and risky influences. We also learned, though, that protective factors over here on the left, which we'll get into a bit more, can reduce all of those sort of risk pathways. So protective factors can help reduce risk even when someone is experiencing or witnessing their parent or caregiver experiencing parental violence, intimate partner violence. When we looked at the existing interventions, really with a 2-generation approach to prevention, what we found is there are some interventions out there that are evidence-informed or evidence-based that are 2-generation prevention, but they tend to work with both generations, so both parents and children, And their focus is really on individual attitudes, behaviors, knowledge, and relational dynamics. We didn't identify a single study of a prevention effort that intervened on parental economic mobility and then also assessed changes in children's risk or experiences of violence. So there was a gap here that we knew we could start to fill. Then we came up, based on all that theory and based on the interventions we had seen, with this theory of change. So LIFT's program, which consists, the key components are direct cash transfers to parents, financial and educational coaching, and social events and relationship building. So this program can increase protective factors and decrease risk factors for parents. Here are some examples that I'm not going to read through, but basically this programming can lower the risk of intimate partner violence for parents. It also helps parents be better resourced to connect with and support their children when life isn't as stressful, when folks have better empowerment and self-efficacy and more economic stability, they are better able to connect with and support with their children. So parents having these better factors directly impacts their children, right? Because children are living in the same families as parents. And it also indirectly impacts kids through the parents being better resourced. So we see that there is lower risk for kids of future intimate partner violence through this theory of change. And then lower risk for parents and lower risk for kids means 2-generation prevention of intimate partner violence. And I will hand it over to Ray for the quantitative evaluation results.
Excellent. So I have the honor of talking about these really exciting findings today, and then the challenge of doing that in about 2 minutes. So I'm going to kind of cut to the chase and just say, if you take one thing away today, it's that LIFT works in improving a number of different financial and social factors for participants. And now let me talk to you a little bit more about what that actually means. So as Dina mentioned, LIFT collects data on all participants quarterly, so every 3 months. As part of this evaluation, we were specifically looking at results for LIFT LA. Just to plug though, we actually subsequently did a similar evaluation for all LIFT sites across the country. And so while the findings we're talking about today are specific to LA, just want to also note that we found similar results across the LIFT program with just a few slight nuances. But so today we're talking about findings among a population of LIFT participants who are largely female, speak Spanish as their first language, and are Hispanic or Latina. So the factors that we looked at were ones that we had identified in the literature review as being relevant to preventing intimate partner violence. These are income, social support, and financial well-being. And again, like really important is that we saw improvements in almost every variable that we looked at, including individual income, household income, social support, and financial well-being. And you can see in this chart the specific numbers. One of the things we wanted to do is be sure that LIFT wasn't actually increasing disparities. And so we wanted to look at whether these increases happened at different rates across participants based on race and language spoken. And really importantly, we found that there were no differences in the amount of improvement we saw in LIFT participants based on their race and their language spoken. We also looked at a number of sort of more like qualitative outcomes, really exciting findings here too. So across LA participants, we saw improvements in educational enrollment, educational attainment, and employment. So once again, the takeaway here is that LIFT's programming actually works in impacting things that support IPV prevention or intimate partner violence prevention. And that incredibly importantly, LIFT does not exacerbate any inequities based on race or primary language spoken.
Thanks, Ray. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why this matters, but we have a bunch of additional speakers who are going to talk about why this matters too. So I'll throw in my 2 cents and then we'll hear from others. But First, Lyft LA's model of cash transfers, economic mobility, and events that build social connection is a promising, novel, and evidence-informed approach for preventing intimate partner violence across 2 generations. It really fills a niche that hasn't been filled yet. I also want to talk about how in intimate partner violence prevention fields and in related fields, violence prevention, public health, we often talk about these like really important key themes like social determinants of health and 2-generation change and moving upstream and root causes. And it can be really difficult to operationalize how we actually do that. But LIFT is a specific, concrete, tangible, replicable model that actually gets a change in these really important underlying themes. So I'm actually going to hand it to Lucia now, if that's okay with you. I see that you have joined us and technical difficulties have been addressed. So I would like to hand it to you.
Thank you, Dina. And can you all hear me? Okay, great. Thank you. I'm not the best to have technical issues in the morning, really, but let me just make this quick. And really, first of all, thank Michelle for the wonderful introduction. Very much appreciated. My name is Lucia Corral Peña. I'm the Chief Program Director here at Blue Shield of California Foundation. And I have had the privilege of partnering and learning alongside LIFT. So first of all, I want to congratulate you on these amazing, phenomenal results. As a foundation, we have 2 main goals. One is to end domestic violence, and 2 is to advance health equity in our world, but in particular in California. And our driving values are partnership, equity, possibility, and integrity. And this particular partnership has really been amazing for us as we made a shift 4 years ago toward prevention. And why I think it's amazing is because of its alignment to our partnership, equity, possibility, and integrity values. Those are all 4 of our main organizational values, and they matter for us because we are always looking for partners to help us achieve our mission, just like LIFT is always looking for partners to achieve its mission. And I met Allie when she was presenting at the Survivor Wealth Summit about 4 years ago. It was pre-COVID. And she was talking about the intersectional cycle of violence. Intersectional cycle of poverty. And at that time, as we were ending our strategic planning process and really shifting as an organization toward prevention, we were looking at really 2 things. Number one is, how do we prevent intimate partner violence in a way that really ends it? Looking at, if you look at it as a cycle of violence that repeats itself, how do we stop that cycle? We know the numbers are huge, and they intersect with many other issues, poverty being one of them. So I was listening to Allie, looking at a shared vision about the intersectional cycle of poverty, and really wondered what that could look like for a partnership with the foundation and a like-minded partner in the field. And we were also looking at the intersectional nature for prevention that needs to happen. And what I mean by that is domestic violence rarely is an issue that stands alone. There are either different forms of violence, there are conditions that hold domestic violence in its place for the life of an individual, a family, and frankly, we believe strongly that it impacts communities. And we see that, although it's not called domestic violence, it's called bullying, it's called mass incarceration, it's called many other things. But at its roots, it's often, if you track those stories, you will find some form of family or domestic violence in the lives of those adults who were once children. And again, we are looking at the cycles of violence. When you look at a cycle of violence, it really requires a two-generation approach, at least. A multi-generational approach is better. All of these concepts that I'm sharing with you are new, and as we made a pivot toward prevention, we thought, where are the community innovators who we can partner with to really explore and understand what are the conditions that are facing low families with few resources to address not just poverty and as a root cause of violence, but also violence as a root cause of trauma, as a root cause of health conditions that begin that support a cycle of poverty. And so I'm so excited to see the results today. We found our way to LIFT in a beautiful partnership that is yielding the evidence that Dina just outlined and that Anna will be outlining. And so in that spirit, I just want to close by saying that when I say highlighting community innovators, we got to these community innovators because the organization is an innovator and people are innovators. And I want to thank the folks that I have met and worked with more closely over the last 3 years to build in partnership this evidence across many different strategies. And that includes Araceli Lopez Andrade, Allie Olson, Dina, Ashley. I've met all of you in different ways and different, and only recently a couple of you in person. So I am just thrilled to hear these results. They're phenomenal. And I really look forward to supporting your continued success as a partner to ending domestic violence in our state. And LIFT is a national program, so we go national as well on ending not only ending domestic violence, but I think for us we don't want people to be survivors. We want them to be thrivers. And for us, this is a model that can help support that vision as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lucia. Beautiful. Thank you so much. We are going to transition to a panel now. And Alex, if you could open up the chat. We're going to be opening up the chat for Q&A, and then after the panel, we'll be taking questions from you all and responding to them. But first, let's introduce our panelists. And Anna, if you could start, and then we'll go left to right on the slide. And if you could just say your names, your pronouns if you'd like, and your connection to LIFT.
Of course. Well, good morning, everyone. My name's Ana Herrera. I'm a research associate with Strategic Prevention Solutions, or SPS. I had the privilege of being part of the evaluation team tasked with conducting the cross-site evaluation of the multi-general impact of programming of sites like LIFT LA as part of Blue Shield of California Foundation's Breaking the Cycle initiative.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Klein Jimenez. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the Director of Prevention at Valor US. We're an organization dedicated to advancing equity and ending sexual violence. And I manage an online prevention project funded by Centers for Disease Control and Prevention called Prevent Connect. We provide technical assistance and training through a community of practice to CDC, IPV, and sexual violence prevention practitioners. So we're always really excited to learn about new and innovative prevention strategies and approaches.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Araceli Lopez Andrade. I'm the proud Deputy Director of the LIFT LA region. I'm also the National Race, Equity, and Inclusion Advisor. I use she, her, hers, ella as my pronouns. Super, super happy to be here. I'm also a 23-year career social worker. And in my past, I've worked with child abuse prevention programs and worked with victims of domestic violence. So this work is very personal to me. Thank you all.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so honored to join you this morning. My name is Abigail Marquez, and I serve as the General Manager of the City of Los Angeles Community Investment for Families Department. Our department was created via a new ordinance last year, not last year, now it's been almost 2 years, July of 2021. And our mission is to end the cycle of generational poverty through the creation of community wealth. Our department is very intentional about disrupting the cycle of generational poverty. We infuse financial empowerment into many of our systems, including our family source system. We support the city-funded domestic violence and human trafficking shelter systems. And we've also been very intentional about looking at innovative approaches to support low-income families across the city. We're currently supporting one of the largest guaranteed basic income programs in the country. Our Big Leap program is currently serving 3,200 households across our city and has provided them with $1,000 of unrestricted financial support for a year. So this month, on the 25th of this month, will be the last disbursement for this cohort of 3,200 families.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this slide so we can see our panel's faces a little bigger. Thank you all for being here. My first question is for Araceli, and I know we talked a little bit earlier on about the key program components of LIFT, but since you are deep in it, could you tell us more about what are the key program components of the LIFT model and why they matter?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Dina. So as a social worker, I am very, very proud of all that you just heard. Learning that our program model directly prevents intimate partner violence is remarkable. It's something that I knew. I knew coming in to LIFT, something I had already talked about. I believe, though, that this will also demonstrate that this model helps prevent homelessness, child neglect, improve mental health, address social determinants of health, but that is a separate research project. I know somebody might be curious, and I'm just putting it out there, okay? So this is how we do it. I'm going to share our secret recipe, okay? Everybody here, this is our secret recipe. You heard the model. It's an evidence-informed approach. We meet parents where they are, which is a social work practice. It's what we teach our social work students. So the combination of one-to-one coaching with our social work interns who are already coming in with the great desire to help people, with the great understanding of some of the social determinants of health is ideal. We sprinkled some economic mobility skills through our financial coaching. We add social capital to build social connections. And we do that through our workshops. We do that through group coaching. We do that through larger events where we bring people that normally would not meet. We add personal well-being resources. And this is with the supports of many of our partners here in LA and throughout all the cities that we work in. And then we infuse it. We infuse our work with direct cash assistance. We transfer $150 every 3 months as they focus on their goals. Y'all, this is the recipe. This is how we prevent homelessness, intimate partner violence, child neglect, a lot of the social determinants of health that we've been talking forever. Y'all, this is the kept secret that is no longer a kept secret. I'm sharing it with you all. So this is how we move our families out of poverty. This is how we prevent intimate partner violence. We know that financial freedom is a direct reason individuals return to abusive situations, right? We can help mitigate that. Our model further prevents intimate partner violence across 2 generations for both LIFT and their children. Because we also understand, right, that the risks and protective factors for IPV are particularly focusing on the areas of economic stability, social connections, and the well-being. These are protective factors that we all can be familiar with. And this is all already a part of the service delivery and the reason we have demonstrated such success. I just shared our secret recipe, y'all. Ask us about how we can then share that with your programs and your organizations through our technical support. We are here for y'all and share more. I'll hand it over back to Dina.
Amazing. Thank you, Araceli. Appreciate that.
Of course.
So the next big question is, the 4 of you all come with different perspectives, and I'd love to hear from all of you how you think LIFT's work can be a unique contribution to the field of intimate partner violence prevention. What is new? What is LIFT bringing that does not already exist in the field? And I would like to pass to Abigail first.
Sure, thank you. And again, I just really appreciate being in this conversation with everyone. I know it's a heavy conversation to have at 9 a.m. in the morning, but it just really shows the fact that we have over 100 people on this call just shows how committed the field is to really looking at the different intersections that we all see, the intersection with health disparities and poverty, the intersections between intimate partner violence and poverty and economic abuse. And I consider myself to be an asset builder, and I've been doing work that is focused on identifying resources to support low-income families and lift them out of poverty for almost 20 years in the city. I started doing this work around the earned income tax credit, recognizing that this particular tax credit, along with other tax credits that have become available, especially the child tax credit, can disrupt the cycle of poverty. So we've shifted. We started to integrate financial coaching and financial empowerment into our social service delivery system, where we're looking at debt to income ratios. We're looking at helping families open up a checking account. Many of them are banked, but they're underbanked in many cases. So looking at, diverting them from payday lenders so that they don't have to spend about $800 a year in check cashing fees. There's so much of the work that we've done over the last few years. And recently, for about 6 years, I've been very focused on the work that our domestic violence and human trafficking shelter does to support survivors. And we're looking at how to best infuse financial empowerment into the system as well. But one of the challenges that we continue to have as a field is that the field itself is very vastly under-resourced. So it's so critical that we recognize that as government and identify how to best support the field to be able to allow them to increase their capacity to do more. Because right now they're in crisis response mode. We have survivors who have been, under incredible trauma for years. And so stabilizing them is so critically important. And then adding the layers of additional support is so important. We did work with Free From a couple of years ago to also look at our financial empowerment work. And we recognize that we were paying poverty wages. That needs to change. And so we're addressing that as a system, both within the domestic violence and human trafficking system and also within the family source system. And most recently, I talked about the work, and I can go on and on. During the pandemic, just very quickly, we housed 3,000 survivors who were fleeing. They were being quarantined with their abusers, and many of them were under severe economic stress. And so again, that many of them reported that it might have been they hadn't had a recent episode of intimate partner violence, but the pandemic created so much more stress and anxiety in those particular households that in the end, again, we were housing 3,000 survivors with 900 children in hotels and motels across the city to support them. And the work that we're doing with our guaranteed basic income is just really has been probably the most impactful bodies of work that I've had the privilege of being a part of. The demographic information of our guaranteed income program is we are primarily serving women. 79% of our participants in our guaranteed income program are women. They're making under $15,000 a year. There is a clear connection with economic abuse, intimate partner violence, and the participants of our program. 65% of them are single women heads of household. Again, these are not, unique challenges. We all see them in our work every day. What has been really transformational about the Guaranteed Income Program is our ability to provide direct cash assistance to the participants of our program. So we've been doing this work for years. I've personally been involved for almost 2 decades. But it's very restrictive. It's with strings attached. This, for the very first time, we're able to truly empower the participants of our program and giving them the financial freedom to make decisions for themselves and their families. And that's what's been really transformational about this work.
Amazing. Thank you, Abigail. Ashley, what are your perspectives on how LIV's contribution is unique to the field?
Yeah, well, first, oh my gosh, I just love everything that's already been shared. I'm just like, yes, all of this. But I think that one thing that I find really exciting about LIFT is the use of the intergenerational approach. I mean, we know that IPV impacts families for many generations. So using an intergenerational approach, to me, it just makes sense. It's really the way out of this. And I think the other thing that is that prevention practitioners, we acknowledge that prevention takes time. It takes a long time. It takes investment. But I think it's a bit of a new shift for IPV prevention practitioners to actually look at how to impact multiple generations in a way that's replicable and sustainable. And so I think that the 2-generation approach, like LIFT's model, can really help us imagine a time frame almost where we might see impacts, which can be so helpful when we're trying to get buy-in from stakeholders and funders, and also just being able to sustain this work, because that is always an issue as well. I also think that there's been a bit of a shift in IPV prevention to look at IPV as a health equity issue and to look at social determinants of health as pathways for violence prevention strategies. But it's a muscle that I think we're all still building in many ways. And sometimes messaging the connections between things like strengthening economic supports and mobility, social connection, and well-being, and IPV prevention, it can be a little bit difficult to explain to decision makers and funders. And I think that LIFT's theory of change that you shared earlier makes this really clear and can be a super important addition to the toolkit that prevention practitioners are assembling to be able to focus on social determinants of health. And I think the other thing that I've been thinking is that people who are doing advocacy work for IPV survivors and IPV prevention practitioners, I think are really, really well positioned to do this work. The IPV advocacy field are not new to working on things like housing and financial advocacy and literacy. And people doing IPV prevention understand that social connection and overall well-being are tied to protective factors. So I think it's really just a bit of reframing that this work is prevention and has the potential to prevent IPV across generations. And lastly, I'll just say that, you know, as I learned more about LIFT and the model, I really saw my family in it and thought that, you know, we didn't so much need to be taught about healthy relationships. We knew that what was happening in my family wasn't healthy. What was needed was my mom really needed access to economic support, access to a community of support, and access to being able to manage, you know, her own mental health and stress. So I really saw myself and my family in this project, and just want to thank you all for that.
Thank you for sharing that, Ashley. Really, it means a lot. Thank you for sharing. Anna, did you have thoughts about LIFT's unique contribution?
I do, and I think I'm going to approach it a little bit more from like a more disparities in prevention research lens, because that's where I'm coming from. But yeah, like Ashley just mentioned, one of the biggest issues that I see in this prevention research is the fact that it takes so much time and it takes a lot of resources, right? And so I think this is where Blue Shield of California Foundation really was innovative in specifically funding evaluation for these multiple sites that are working on multiple things, multiple risk factors and protective factors. And that's the other challenge that I see typically in the work, is that the lack of acknowledgement of the intersectionality of all of these issues, because economic security, as you all pointed out, impacts a lot of different things. It's impacting mental health, it's impacting like housing, food security, right? It decreases the likelihood of adults engaging in negative coping behaviors, and it also impacts the children. And so I think that's where LIFT really came in to really look at both the impact in the children and the adults, and in some cases even like other as well, like partners. We had conversations where we even saw the impact on like grandparents, for example, or like friends and families, neighbors who often serve as caregivers. And so I think that's still something that's missing in the larger, broader literature that LIFT is really contributing in here. And so I love that we're talking about this today, because there's a lot of benefits for evaluation. And I learned that it's not just about improving like the programming for the families, but it also helped LIFT staff realize like where they are also still opportunities for them to grow and to better support them so that they can also better support the family. So it's really this cycle of like improvement, supporting. And so we need to continue to build this evidence base with the research so that others can pick it up and so that others also see themselves in this work and so that they don't see it as a single issue.
Thanks so much. Abigail, go ahead.
I wanted to add, I got so excited I didn't really answer your question, and I just wanted to quickly lift up as well the remarkable work that Lyft does every day, not just in our city, but across the country. And to Anna's point is exactly what I was going to include in my comments, is that the fact that there is now a body of research that is attached to the work and the framework and the work that Lyft is doing, I think is going to be what will help other models or other cities, other organizations apply those best practices. And that is what is often missing in the work that we do. We're really good at implementing, or sometimes better than others, but we're good about designing, implementing programs, but the research piece, the evaluation piece is often missing, and it doesn't allow for us to scale this work. And so this is why I think this is such an important conversation, and this is a really incredible opportunity for us to look at how the work that Lyft is doing can be scaled, can be replicated, because Lyft has been leading on cash transfers. They have been leading on the financial coaching, on the community support, which are all so critical to support the holistic needs of families and households that we're working with. So I agree with you, Araceli. You have the ingredient, the secret sauce you've shared. Those are three very critical pillars that we see in all of the work that we do. But now you have the research and evaluation piece attached to it, which I think will just really open up additional opportunities for this work in the field.
Thank you. And Araceli, did you want to add something?
I actually just wanted to answer the question that Gabe posted on the chat to support some of the stuff that Abigail just mentioned, if I may. Unless you had another question, Dina, that you'd like us to answer.
Go for it. I actually can't see the chat, so go for it.
Awesome. So the question is, can you expand more on the importance of pairing economic mobility coaching with social capital and well-being support? How does that combination compare to just doing financial coaching or just providing cash? It's a simple answer for me. Everyone needs someone in their corner. Everyone needs someone that they can depend on, that they can trust, that they can learn from, right? And so Lyft does that for our families. We're the people that are in the family's corners, and we help them navigate systems. We help them with executive functioning skills. We help them reduce some of the stressors that poverty can come, that living in an abusive home can bring, right? And so when we do the combination of like the coaching, having that cheerleader on your corner and helping you navigate systems, connect you to resources, plus connecting you to other people, is how we reduce isolation. It's how we reduce depression. It's how we infuse a lot of the strengths-based approaches that we have through our coaching, through our one-on-one individual coaching that our social work students provide. Then we empower our families with financial literacy, right? How to make financial decisions, how to make sure that we stabilize the home and the children so that they can thrive. So it is a combination of being there for others, connecting to others as human beings. We need each other. We need that support, right? And then being able to have access to resources, access to other ways in which you can help stabilize your family. The cherry on top is that cash transfer. Being able to support our families and really trust that they're making the best decisions to stabilize their families. And at the same time, dismantling this notion that poor people do not know how to manage money. Hopefully that answers the question, Gabe.
Thank you, Araceli.
Yeah.
And I do have one more question for the panel. it's like I'm so excited about these results, and learning more about LIFT's model has been lovely this whole time. And if we want to scale, if we want to disseminate, there's got to be some supports, right? We can't just go off this webinar and then everybody can implement, right, if they want to. So what supports do you all feel like are necessary in order for the intimate partner violence prevention field to be able to take these lessons learned and incorporate them, run with them? And I'm going to start with Ashley.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, I feel like there are so many opportunities here. I think that the core components that we've been hearing about, the secret sauce of LIFT, are approaches that a lot of prevention practitioners are already really excited about, and some of them are even implementing. And so that's really exciting, but this provides more of a framework, a roadmap, I think, than what we've had in the past. And I was thinking back, so we recently hosted, Prevent Connect recently hosted a web conference series with researchers Victoria Banyard and Sherry Hamby. And the content was built around their new book that's called Strengths-Based Prevention. And something that they discuss in the book is that seeking to improve the quality of life for people may have a greater impact than just trying to target specific social problems one by one. And so I think that the LIFT model gets to that goal, and like Lucia said earlier, can move us from seeing people survive to creating environments where people can actually thrive. So I'd really love to see LIFT disseminate the theory of change, the model, the effectiveness findings to the IPV prevention field, and even beyond that, train prevention practitioners in LIFT's model and the theory of change, the essential elements. I think many practitioners do see their role in IPV prevention connected to increasing economic supports, but don't necessarily have the skills in that area. So I think developing those skills to do economic mobility coaching would be a really cool area to explore. And then I also think that this is such a cross-cutting approach. And so taking a collective power approach with IPV prevention practitioners and people who are working in the economic world would be really helpful. IPV prevention practitioners understand the value in cross-sector collaborations, so it would be really fantastic to do cross-training for both sectors on how to really coordinate the goals and also expand networks. I'll pass it to my other panelists.
I can speak to what support we need from a government perspective, since that's the role that I have, and I do think that especially with cash transfers and the ability to infuse other wraparound services is so critical. And I hate when I think what we've seen with our guaranteed income program is that many of our public benefits cancel each other out the minute you infuse additional financial support into a household. And that does not help to lift a family out of poverty or an individual. We saw it even, and I say it, and even though it's not a popular comment to make, when we saw the increase to our minimum wage, the one single dollar dropped thousands of people out of the CalFresh program. That $1 is not going to, help to stabilize that particular household. The $1,000 even a month that we're doing through our guaranteed income, $12,000 at the end of the year for a family that's making $14,000, $15,000 is not going to place them in a middle income bracket where they should lose all of their benefits. And I think we as government, with the local, state, and federal government, need to be stronger aligned, more coordinated. We need to be communicating, because we're doing a disservice to the communities that we're trying to impact. I think we all can agree that we have the same mission, and that is to help support families. And so we need to actually, if we're committed to that mission, we need to look at the regulatory changes that we need to make, the policy changes that we need to make to actually streamline and remove the bureaucratic barriers that really hinder families instead of helping them. So I have a long laundry list of what those are, if anybody's ever interested.
Amazing. I'm gonna make space now for all four of the panelists. Is there anything that you felt like you wanted to say that you haven't gotten a chance to say yet before I start shifting to some of the questions that have come in from the chat? No, all good. Okay, great. So a question that we saw from the chat, or comment that could be turned into a question, is how LIFT's program can be secondary prevention for survivors. So we've been talking about primary prevention and two-generation prevention, and I think I'd like to speak a little bit on this one too. So we knew coming in, as I mentioned, sort of at the top of the hour, that there's this cycle of violence for survivors. Free From also has done a lot of great work on showing how experiencing intimate partner violence creates additional risk for future intimate partner violence. We've heard about how the barriers to leaving often are financial, and a very common, I think, according to Free From, I think 99% of abusive relationships, there's financial control, which can include literally controlling the money coming in. It can include sabotaging somebody's education or ability to work, right? So the very experience of intimate partner violence itself can exacerbate this risk. But LIFT's model, I mean, the cash transfer, I mean, I think one thing that I think is really important is the cash transfer can come into an account or come to a family in a way that abuser doesn't have access to. So this can start to be a fund that the survivor controls. That's huge. That can open so many possibilities for our family. And educational enrollment, educational attainment, those can lead to a pathway where survivors have more options, more stability, more mobility, and with more options, more choice comes ability to comes decreased risk and ability to protect themselves and their family and be connected. So that's my 2 cents. And I'd love if anyone else has thoughts about how this work is secondary prevention, so preventing violence or bad outcomes after someone has already experienced intimate partner violence. Or not. I sort of went on for a while there. There were a couple other comments in the chat and some links to resources. Perhaps we might be able to share those out with folks if in no other way than at least in the recording. But thank you for sending those resources in. We really appreciate that. And one more question about how LIFT is interested in scaling through technical assistance and policy. So I don't know, Araceli or maybe Michelle, if you want to talk about how you all are planning to scale with technical assistance and policy.
Sure, I'll address that. So LIFT has a direct service. First of all, I'll start with the direct service pieces. We have direct service sites located in Chicago, DC, New York, and Los Angeles. And that is where, that's what we consider our action tank. It's where we stay proximate to the work. It's where we are able to do this type of evaluation, right? Get our learning, our insights, in order to be able to bring it to the field at large. As I mentioned before, we really recognize that changing lives is important. That direct service, I feel like, is the most valuable thing that we could be doing as an organization. But we work with, thousands of individuals across the country when the problem of poverty is in the millions, right? And so in order to be able to get to scale, we created a pathway through technical assistance and through policy and advocacy work. So through technical assistance, we're working specifically within 4 sectors within early childhood. I'm really excited about the opportunity to actually delve in deeper into the child welfare space as a result of having these findings. Within government systems, so working with really innovative and brilliant and mindful leaders like Abigail to be able to think through more humanitarian approaches to how services are being delivered, and that can then be more effective. We work with post-secondary institutions as well, so helping student parents to be able to matriculate because we know that that can be a wonderful lever for increased income and mobility, as well as a wonderful model for children. And then we also work within the healthcare sector as well. So really directly addressing social determinants of health. And I'll just preview that we have our next webinar coming up on May the 4th, that is actually going to be featuring one of the studies that LIFT participated in around a medical and financial partnership that was just recently published in Pediatrics. So it's by working within these pillars and partners that are reaching more people, where parents are already showing up once again, that we're then able to hopefully get to scale at being able to improve the circumstances for parents and children. And then in the policy space, I mean, that's really where you get at, population level change. So that's where we're able to leverage also, again, this type of valuation and data, the relationships that we have within the technical assistance space to be able to create a compelling case for policy, change and to inform policy. What's important for us in the policy space is that parents are at the center, right? So it's really making sure that we are creating the spaces so that they have a seat at the table and that they're ready in order to be able to really bring their power and call to action when they're in those spaces. And much more to share there as well. But thank you for the question.
Yeah, thanks so much, Michelle. And I'm really excited to see how that scaling can connect with intimate partner violence. I mean, as we've demonstrated, all of this work is very connected. And so I think the scale, not only nationally, not only in policy, but also between fields is super exciting. So with that, I just want to thank all of our wonderful panelists for being here. It's been so nice to work on this evaluation and learn about the work, and then to see you all excited about it and thoughtful about how this can take these multiple fields forward. I'm so appreciative. And I will turn it back to Michelle for some closing remarks.
Yes, I'm just going to add to the gratitude. Thank you all for attending this webinar. It is our first one. I think very strong beginnings. Again, look out for the study in your inboxes. We'll be sending that along with a recording of this presentation as well, so that you can help to deepen your learning and also spread the word. And thank you so much to these amazing presenters and panelists that have just, I think, inspired us all and got our mind abuzz around what can be done next. This really is just the tip of the iceberg in a very important conversation, an important moment that so many of you are here to learn more about. So what I would note is that if you have any other ideas or questions, please do reach out to LIFT's Chief Program Strategy Officer, Gila Robinson. I believe that we're going to be dropping her email in the chat. Let's just make sure that it's coming. Yeah, I don't see the email coming, but we'll make sure to also send that in our follow-up. And again, look out for the next webinar on May 4th. And just thank you so much for joining us today. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, everybody.
Mm-hmm.